Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little watch right here. This is the Bulova Moonwatch. That's all it's called, just the Moonwatch. And I want to thank very much my buddy Eric for sending this little guy along. It's a really interesting little watch. It's got some interesting history to it, and it's right up my alley, being a high-end quartz sort of piece. So thank you so much, Eric, for trusting me with your watch for a little while. Worth saying that this comes with three different options of strap. This is the bracelet. There is also a Velcro strap for it, as well as a leather strap for some version. Let's do a quick size comparison here. Right here is a Seiko Turtle. This is the SRPA, something or another. I forget exactly which SRPA, but it's one of them. It's a turtle. Right here is an Omega Seamaster Professional 300 in the quartz model. Right here is your Casio F91W. To give you a sense of things, your Casio F108 lives right here. And just to give another point of comparison, this is a standard US quarter next to the Moonwatch, and I'll set it gingerly on top of the... So you can see here, this is not a tiny watch. Absolutely any of these watches on the table here are kind of dwarfed in a lot of ways by the Moonwatch, at least on this vertical dimension. That's a big one. And actually, let's also do a little bit of more explicit measurement here. I'm going to see if I can do this nicely, but I've got a little mirror here, and we can see that the lug-to-lug distance, which is one of the biggest things that affects how a watch wears, is close to 53 millimeters here. That's pretty insane, even though the actual size of the crystal here is only like 40 millimeters. So this is a very, very, very large watch. And then if we put the crown in there, the side-to-side becomes like 46, whatever. But either way, it's big. It's a big one, that's for sure. So there you go. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your little Bulova Moonwatch here. And all right, here we go. Okay, so on the good side, first off, this watch does have a nice story. When you think Moonwatch, everybody thinks of the Omega Speedmaster. And that was the watch that NASA issued the two astronauts who went to the moon and so whatnot. None of those were ever released to the public because they were all U.S. government property. But there was actually one other watch that was visiting the moon that wasn't an Omega Speedmaster, and that was a prototype Bulova Chrono. Very different than this watch, obviously, much less modern, but it is interesting, and it was actually put on the market. It was the only moon-worn watch to ever go up for sale, and it sold for $1.6 million, which is absolutely absurd. But that's okay. Collectors are willing to pay a lot of money for things. Bulova has actually released, in honor of that watch, this new version here, the Moonwatch. And it's designed to resemble the original Bulova that was on the moon. Obviously, it's entirely different inside, and if you look at the subdials of the Moonwatch versus this one, this is very different, but at the same time, it harkens back to that, and it's sort of an interesting story to go with it. So there you go. Next thing, the watch on the whole is actually pretty attractive. It's black, it's white, it's relatively minimalist for a chrono. It's legible, which is one of the big things. Very often when you have a chronograph, and I'll start the chrono here just for fun, you get lost on all of the little subdials. You see about a billion things going on there, and it's hard to actually tell the time, or at least it takes you a second. Whereas on this guy, you've got these nice thick hour and minute hands, you've got nice big white indices. It's pretty easy to see what's going on despite that. And so I like that, and the legibility to me is attractive in and of itself. I also very much like the Bulova logo here. Just the little crossbar on the A being a little swish rather than just an A. I don't know, it just brings me a little bit of joy, and it looks vaguely space age, which I like. So there you go. Next thing on this guy, actually I'll bring it back up here, is that there is a date function. We can see right here it is the 17th, and it lives right here between these two hour markers, which means that it's very legible, and it's also not distracting anything. I mean, you see the chrono dials here, but it's nice to have a date on there, and it does have a quick set date function where if you pull the crown out to the second position and you start turning, you can adjust the date rapidly, which is good if you're in a month that has 30 days versus 31, or, well, you're not going to run out of, it's not a mechanical, you're not going to run out of power reserve, but still. So that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, this is a chronograph, and so every time that you press one of these buttons, it starts this chronograph, which basically will time things. And that's kind of a nice thing, but the pushes for it on the chrono are very, very nice to use. They're very large, and they've got a nice positive clicky retention to them. When you press this in, it's very easy to feel that you've hit it. When you press it again, you feel that. And then to reset it, you use this bottom one. And so the nice thing about these pushes being this big is that when this guy is actually on your wrist, it's very easy just to reach down and kind of have your finger on there and then pinch when the time comes and then pinch again. There's no, your fingers aren't going to fall off it. They're just big. And I like so much these pushes. They also look kind of cool, I'll be honest with you there. They make the watch look even bigger than it already does, but still, the chrono pushes are nice. Next thing here, we can see that the second hand is actually moving at 2 hertz rather than just 1. Here, I'll put up this omega right next to it, which works at 1 hertz, where the second hand moves once a second. You can see here that the Bulova is actually ticking twice as quickly as the omega over here. Does that actually play a role? No, not necessarily, but it is a little different. It's interesting. Bulova is known for high-frequency quartz. Maybe it's a nod in that direction. So it's different. That's fine. The price on this guy is actually fine. It's not incredible, but it's pretty decent now. They are selling for about $350 and a little bit less than that without a bracelet. You can even go to real retailers, like go to a Macy's and pay $350 and walk out with one of these. That's A-okay. They were $500 or so when they first came out, but that's a little much. Now we're down to a reasonable place. And frankly, if you want a high accuracy quartz, and we'll talk about that, chronograph, that is nicely made, that's an okay price to me. That's what you'd pay for a regular Eco Drive, something along those lines. So that's good. Another thing is the dial on this guy is interesting because it has multiple levels. I'm going to see if I can show this off by going a little oblique. And I'm going to put a little light on the subject from a flashlight to the side here. And hopefully that'll help to highlight this. There's one central kind of platform on which all of the subdials are sitting, and then each of the subdials is actually lowered down separately. So each subdial drops beneath this central black platter. And then the area around the outside with all of the seconds marked, that's a separate platter altogether. And it's below the level of all of those other things. And then each of the indices is applied. It's separately on there, and so it sticks up above that surface. And the result of this is a dial that is very three-dimensional. It's very nice in a lot of ways. I like this dial very, very much. And so, nice. Just nice. And then, finally, the accuracy on this guy is wonderful. I am kind of a quartz nerd, absolutely 100%. I believe that for most people, quartz is going to be the very best option for everyday carry of a watch. And Bulova's ultra-high-frequency quartz is a very accurate movement. It should be accurate to within tens of seconds per year. If we compare this to the Moonwatch, you're off more seconds in a month with a Moonwatch from the Omega Moonwatch than you are in a year with this guy. That's nice. And it's hard to measure that on, but in my testing, it seems absolutely absurdly accurate. I have detected no deviation from GPS using timing applications. So that's a beautiful thing. So that to me is what's great here, is that it's got great accuracy. It's got a nice multi-level dial. The price on this guy is honestly fine. It's got a 2 hertz second hand, which is interesting. The chrono pushes are very easy to use. It's pretty. It's legible. I love the logo, and it's got a very interesting history as well. So, there you go. That's going to bug me. Let's talk about the grade instead. To me, what's great about this watch is actually the chronograph movement. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Not only is it nice to have a chrono on occasion, and not only do you get a nice feature like the tachymeter here. Tachymeter, I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. But either way, it's just a scale that basically you, if you know that something's happening periodically, you press it when you say, let's say you're trying to figure out how quickly you're going. What you would do is you would, when you pass a mile marker, press this little button. And then just wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, and drive, and drive, and drive. And then, next time you pass another mile marker, you just press it again. And if it was that quick, then you know you were traveling 300 miles an hour. At that point, you're probably speeding, or you're in like a plane or something, and at that point, your speed is the least of your worries. But nonetheless, that's how a tachymeter works, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. But more interestingly is that this is a chrono that's got sub-second precision. So if we look at this little dial here on the side, when I turn the chrono on, it's moving very quickly. Watch. Each time that dial, that little hand goes around, it's measuring out a full second. Which means if I stop this, not only do you know how long the timed quantity was in seconds, but you know it in sub-second, well, at least some small portion of a second. So right there, I stopped at roughly, 100 milliseconds after the second. I'll be honest here, it's kind of silly given that human reaction times aren't that fast, but still, it's kind of neat. And the other thing I'll highlight is that after this has been running for 30 seconds, after the chronos run for 30 seconds, it stops. And, actually, let's see if it stops at 30 here. But that's kind of a nice thing because it's not wasting battery on precision that you don't need. If you're timing for 45 minutes, okay, it must be 30 seconds of continuous run. But if you're timing something for 45 minutes, you don't need split-second precision. However, let's see, hopefully it'll stop here soon, and then we'll let it go a little bit further. There we go. So it's still running. The second hand is still running, but this sub-second hand isn't. Now watch, I'm going to stop this again, and watch what that little sub-second hand does. It goes to the point where it would have been had it still been spinning. That's really neat, and that's kind of something that you can only do with quartz. To stop a hand from running and then restart it where it should have been is neat. And frankly, this kind of sub-second dial is something you can only really do with quartz. On a mechanical movement that is moving at, say, 3 hertz or something like that, basically it ticks every, 3 times in a second, like this Seiko here, you're not going to get that kind of precision even in a very well-built chrono. So, silly, yes, but neat. And to me, that's what's great here, is this chrono movement. Okay, so on the bad side, first off, if you're timing things longer than an hour, this isn't a great approach. It only has the ability to show up to 60 minutes of progress. So, there you go. Not a big deal for many, but it might be for some. Next thing. Bulova is known for their precisionist high-frequency quartz movements, yet they're only using 2 hertz for this little second hand. I think it would have been very neat. If you look at some of their higher-end watches, you'll see that they have what actually appears to be a very smooth sweeping seconds hand, because they fire the little motor instead of just 2 times a second or 1 times a second. Like on this Omega here, they fire their little stepper motor maybe 10, 15, 20 times a second. I think it would have been very, very neat to see that continuous, or at least continuous-looking sub-second hand there. It's not the end of the world, but it's a trademark that Bulova has, and I feel like this is a missed opportunity not to use it. Next thing, this is missing some of the features that make a very high-end quartz watch very high-end. It is a high-accuracy quartz. I don't know if it technically qualifies. It's not thermocompensated, but it is an accurate movement. But at the same time, you don't get things like radio control, so you can't get satellite movement. You don't get solar or kinetic charging either, so you're going to need to bring this to a jeweler in order to replace the battery. And that's a little less than ideal. And the biggest weird thing to me on this, in terms of quartz issues, is that this does not have an independent hour hand, which means that in order to change the hour, whether it's due to daylight savings time or if you flew, into a different time zone or something like that, you actually need to stop the watch. And what that means is that you've just lost your accurate seconds hand. You've lost the timing accuracy that you had. One of the joys of a high-accuracy quartz watch is that you don't have to adjust the watch hardly ever. And here you have to adjust it every time you change hours. That's a little weird to me. I kind of would like to see that. And it's not super uncommon. I mean, this Omega guy has that, any day of the week, and I don't know. So, it needs to have that independent hour hand. Next thing, the hour and the minute hand are a little bit on the similar side, especially when you have an index right above the hour. So if you look down right here at a glance, the minute hand is a very long chunk of white, and the hour hand and index are a very long chunk of white. You kind of need to do a second look when you're right on an hour in order to figure out which is the hour and which is the minute. Generally, you have a good idea whether it's, noon or something like that, but still, a little bit weird there. Next thing, the sapphire on this is pretty well raised up. If we take a look from the side here, we can see that rather than being a relatively flush or domed sapphire like you have on this Citizen, or where'd that Seiko go, or hiding underneath the bezel, as on this little guy, here the sapphire crystal is sticking up a fair amount. That's a little bit weird. It's not a big problem. It's sapphire, it's durable, but that increases the chance of you chipping this sapphire if you hit it against something. It's a little weird. Oh, by the way, I never did show off the back of it, which is honestly kind of neat. It kind of gives the Moonwatchy history. It's got the tuning fork logo. Bulova was known for their tuning fork movements back in the day. which is kind of cool. So there you go. Next thing, the bracelet on this guy, I'll be honest, doesn't impress me particularly for a couple of reasons. First off, if you look at the watch itself, it's sort of a matte blasted finish on the case of the watch, on the pushes, on pretty much every part of this. And then the bracelet is this very kind of shiny brushed sort of an affair. I'm not saying that the bracelet needed to be entirely that, but having the end link look entirely different from the bracelet, I'm sorry, from the rest of the watch, is weird. It feels like they just grabbed an off-the-shelf bracelet and threw it in the box with this guy. And that's a little bit weird. Also, the bracelet uses a butterfly closure here, which means that you have 0 options for quick adjust. The closest thing that you've got is a half link that you can put inside there, which is, I don't know. I really like the ability to adjust my bracelet if my wrist swells up a little bit or something along those lines. So not a fan of the bracelet there particularly. Next thing is that this guy has 5 atmosphere water resistance, and that's all. That's kind of really below the curve. Your dive watches can go up to, this is a 30 atmosphere, a 300 meter sort of thing. This is 50 meters. What that means is that practically speaking, yeah, you can wash your hands with it, and if you get tossed into a pool, you'll probably be okay as long as you don't thrash around too much. But I really do like to see 100 meters as kind of that's the lowest acceptable water resistance to me. Because at that point, you don't need to worry about water. If you forget your watch and you hop into the shower, you're going to be okay. Or, you get tossed in the hot tub, you're going to be okay. You don't need to think about 100 meters, but 50 meters is a little bit more borderline iffy. So I think they should have gone up a little bit in the water resistance there. And there's no reason they couldn't have done better. This crown doesn't screw down, for instance. They could have fixed that. And so, I don't know. I'd like to see better than that. Then the last thing on the bad side is that this watch is kind of huge. Honestly, I love the idea of this watch, but the implementation is gigantic, particularly on this dimension. The crystal itself, the actual dial, is not all that big, but instead it's got these huge lugs coming off to either side, these big teardroppy sorts of lugs, and that also they're very thick, so this watch wears very, very large. It feels pretty huge on my hand in a way that a lot of other watches really don't. Even ones that are similar in terms of bezel or in terms of, the interior, this crown here, rotating crown, is not much different in size than the entire face of the Bulova here, but this feels a lot smaller because the lugs aren't so freaking large. This watch to me feels like a dinner plate. You could serve guacamole off the face of this watch with it being the size that it is, and that's kind of annoying. So this is kind of artificially big, and I really, really wish that they'd made this in a smaller version or just made the damn thing smaller. Not every watch needs to be huge, okay, watch companies? So to me, that's what's bad here. The watch is kind of huge, especially on the height dimension. 54, 55 is huge as a lug-to-lug distance. It's only 5 atmospheres water resistant, which is a little lazy and not something that brings me joy. You've got a non-matching bracelet, and the bracelet itself is underwhelming. The sapphire is raised up, which makes it a little more fragile. The hour and the minute hand look very similar. There's no distinguishing them in terms of shape, so if you're right by the index, it can get a little strange. It's missing some nice quartz tricks, no solar charging, no kinetic charging, no radio control, and no independent hour hand. And the chrono is only good for an hour worth of use. Let's go on ahead and talk about the ugly here. To me, the ugly thing is the loom on this watch. Any good watch is going to have a compound that's applied to the hands and the indices that lights up and glows in the dark. This allows you to roll over in the middle of the night and look at your watch and know what time it is. To give you a sense of it, I'm going to use this flashlight off camera here to charge this loom up very brightly and kind of show you what we're working with here. You can see that already, right after a very strong charge, some of the hour markers are already starting to fade off and look very speckly. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit more here. The hour hand is already looking a little bit on the dim side. It's just not very good. It's not thickly applied, and so there's not a lot of loom, and this will fade off even more quickly afterwards. Let's compare side by side with the Omega Seamaster here. Do the exact same test with the same flashlight, and this is glowing like just beautifully. This is not a super incredible loom watch. It's good, but it's not great. Either way, it's night and day. If I look, we'll just use an example. If I charge the lume to max on this watch at midnight, and then I go to sleep, and I roll over and I look on my bedside table at 5 a.m., this guy is just barely legible. And I actually did try this. As opposed to, for instance, on this guy, or even better, this Seiko, which is just a lume monster, where it's just plain as day. You look over, you know the time, problem solved. This is just kind of a cut corner to me. They could have done more lume. They could have used better lume. And with these nice big white rectangles, they could have applied all kinds of it. But they didn't. And to me, that's really ugly. And it's something that makes my appreciation of this watch go down significantly. I'm a lume snob, I'll admit that, but they should have done better here. So at least for me, that's the ugly thing here, is just that they really need to do better in the lume department. So let's go on ahead and jump into the final conclusions here. So, look, final conclusion, this is a fine watch. It's accurate, it's attractive, and it is well done for the most part. And it does have a really neat story, that whole space thing. To be sure, it is not the same pedigree as the Speedmaster Pro, which was issued by freaking NASA. This isn't the same watch worn on the moon, except in general appearance. It wasn't NASA selected, it's just what Ron Astronaut decided he would wear, and let's face it, it is still mostly marketing, but it is kind of nice. And I gotta say that if you're thinking about this as an alternative to the Speedmaster Pro, the Omega Moonwatch, there are some nice modernities here. It's got a quartz movement rather than a hand-wound mechanical movement, so it's going to be way more accurate, more durable, etc. It's got a sapphire crystal rather than Hesselite, which is a kind of polymer crystal. You've got hugely increased accuracy. You'll be off in a year what a normal Speedy would be off in a week or two, and you're paying about a tenth of the price for this guy. $350 versus, $3,500, $4,000 and more. It's a big, big difference. And so this is a nice way to get a Moonwatch, even if you don't want to buy the Moonwatch. That said, this does have three big issues that are keeping this guy off of my wrist and out of my collection and out of gem territory for me. The water resistance is not exactly a great thing. They can do better than that, and they should do better than that. The lume on it is basically terrible. I mean, it's okay, I guess, but they need to do better than that. And it's just too damn big for most people. Make sure that you try one of these guys on, or at least hold a ruler up to your wrist and see whether 55 is as big for me as it is for you. Well, I guess 53. And the nice thing about a Bulova is that a lot of, at least in the States, a lot of jewelry stores carry Bulova, so you'll be able to try one of these guys on. So that's a nice thing. But that's kind of where I land on this guy. It is a nice watch. It's got a fun story. And if you can pull off the size and you don't need great lume, this is absolutely fine. It's got some nice features, decent build, great accuracy, a great chrono, and it's got a neat story. Not perfection, not a solid gem, but for $300, $350, you could sure do a lot worse. So there you go. I hope this review flew you to the moon and back, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.